Everyone, welcome to the first Father's Friday video conversation. I thought, what better way to do that than to bring my co-founder back, Chris Lewis. We are celebrating this fall our 5th anniversary as a 501c3, which is pretty crazy that this guy I met, Chris, gosh, back in 2010-ish maybe, through higher ed connections, would lead to a business partner for many years. So Chris, thanks for being here with me.
It is my pleasure, Brian, to be here. It is amazing that this journey that we've been on in moving from our higher ed days to moving into, supporting each other as dads, starting the online communities, moving to a 501c3. I mean, it's been a wild roller coaster of the last we'll say 7 years because really it's been about 7 years, but that we've been doing things, but 5 years as a nonprofit and really just learning what it means to be a nonprofit and being able to advocate and support dads.
100%. I mean, I still remember February 2018, I got a message from you on Facebook saying, hey, join this little idea called Dads with Daughters. We're all on a journey of discovery. And I was, kind of building my own neighborhood dad group because I had two little ones at that point and had no clue what I was doing. And, I remember there was about 50 of us that initially said yes to your idea. And within a couple months, we had 500. And within a year, we had 10,000. And it just kept growing till, I mean, we still have 125,000 dads in there, which is just insane. Definitely not in my life plan or professional journey plan by any stretch of the imagination.
The thing that I love about the online groups is just that dads are being vulnerable. They're opening up. They're sharing their own journey. They're sharing their own positive things, negative things, but they're asking for support. And dads don't always do that. They don't always look to build community. And I think that's been one of the really positive things about both the dads with daughters group, the dads with sons group, our legal and custody issues group, our dads in recovery. I mean, all of our different online communities, I think, have provided dads that really need that connection or want that connection in their lives or are feeling like, hey, I'm struggling out here a little bit. May not say that I'm struggling, but it gives them something to grasp onto and start with as they are going through that journey themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the people that struggled were not explicit, like you say, but we definitely have had, suicide notes posted. We had dads saying that their families were better off without them. And members immediately jumped in, looked them up online, tried to find local police officers, ambulances, support services, to reach out and make sure that dads were okay. And I think that's so countercultural. Maybe not so much now. Like, I think a lot of things have changed in the last 5 years, especially with the pandemic. But in those early days, I felt like that was very abnormal to just see strangers, especially dads, caring about other dads. Because I think many of us grow up with this narrative that we have to be a strong, sturdy oak that can take care of ourselves. We don't ask for help. We don't go to the doctor. And that's just not true anymore. And we saw it evolve over the last 5 years in primarily our, virtual community because of the pandemic, but more and more in the in-person events and projects that we are hosting. So yeah, it's been a wild ride. And I will say, we have not done this alone by any stretch of the imagination. As the group was blowing up in 2019, we had a number of volunteers step up to help moderate the group. We had Dave Johnston. Dave, I'll just lead off his last name because he's a sordid, goofy individual, but Dave from Colorado, we all know who you are. You brought a perspective and a joy that I don't think any of us expected when we saw the skull and crossbones on your avatar on Facebook. But the reality is dads come from all walks of life. And so many of the dads that joined up have nothing in common with me. I don't think I would ever have been friends with them. And yet this community that we built that had dad as the common denominator, right? Like some of us were into sports, some of us were into nerdy Dungeons and Dragons and other games. But the common ground was our kids and finding a better path forward. I'm not getting choked up. I'm just going through something. I don't know. Why don't you take over, Chris?
I completely agree with you. And we could not have done this without everybody that walked along with us in this journey. And while Brian and I have tried to lead things along the way as we've grown, as we've continued to grow, we continue to try to listen and we try to hear, what is needed within our communities, within the groups. And whether that's the in-person, whether that's online, whether that's educational sessions, but trying as an organization to stay at the forefront of the pulse of what is happening in fatherhood and allowing for us to be able to be advocates in many ways to support dads of every walk of life. You're going to find in our online communities, and that's one of the things that's really kind of another thing that I love, is that dads that are in this group are from every walk of life. They're not from one socioeconomic status. They're not from, one type of career field. They're not from one ethnicity. They're from all over the world. And you find them bringing their different perspectives in. And yes, we have to moderate. We do what we can because sometimes those cultural nuances can cause a little bit of stress and sometimes can cause some misunderstandings. But along the way, I know we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about fatherhood, about dads in the community, and we continue to do that. And I think one of the other things that I've really loved was that in the first few years, we went through this process of trying to share some of the stories of dads in a lot of different ways. So we did that through two different books. So we put out our first book, which was a dad stories book. We had a second book that Brian wrote that again shared stories of fathers from a lot of different walks of life called Fathering Together. And then we even have a podcast that we've been doing now since 2020 that is all about helping dads to better learn from other dads and learn about the journeys that they're on. So I think this whole arc of storytelling has been something that I've really appreciated, and it shows up in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, because we all have stories at our core, right? Like that's how we build a relationship, that's how we build connection. Every night my daughter asks me to tell a story before bed. Sometimes she asks me to tell a story of my own childhood. Other times I get to just make believe with her and come up with fantastical stories about kings and queens and ogres and things, right? So stories are what make us who we are. And we've been very blessed to have so many diverse voices sharing stories on our podcasts and our books, but also in the educational resources. And so if you've not been involved with Fathering Together before, this is your first introduction to us. The last few years with Father's Friday, we've been hosting panels, but we've done a number of different panels beyond Father's Friday where we've brought in, expert opinion, not opinions, but expert thought leaders rather, to share what they've learned around gender equity, both in the home and how to balance the workload in the home, because gone are the days of mom as a homemaker and dad as a breadwinner. And so how are you stepping up and connecting with your kids, connecting with your partner in the home? How are you advocating in the workplace to create gender equitable practices and parental leave opportunities for everyone? How are you, navigating your child's identity development? We have many dads who are heterosexual, white, cisgendered men who have children that are, exploring the bounds of their identity. And many of us did not grow up with that perspective. Some of us still struggle with that perspective, but we have dads willing to step forward and explain their journey and use their personal experience as a learning opportunity for all of us. And so, yeah, I couldn't have wished for a better midlife crisis, so to speak. But also just to be on a journey with so many dads that have informed my practice and made my practice, so to speak, better as a dad. We'll see, in 10 years when my kids go off to college. You've already got one out there in the world, Chris. So yeah, I don't know. Anything change in the last few years of helping your daughter grow and be ready for the world as a result of kind of co-founding this organization?
I think with both my daughters, I've had to come to a better understanding of how to truly hear what they're saying, but really listen and hear what they're saying. And one of my past guests on the podcast And and basically this podcast, like I said, has been around since 2020. And one of our past guests brought a story to my attention. And it was a story of her working with a client, and she's a psychologist. And she was talking about the challenges that this father was having in connecting with his daughters. And in this conversation, she said to him a tool that she gave him a tool. And the tool was basically that when you walk into a situation where you're walking in the room and talking to your daughters, or your daughters are wanting to share something with you, give them the benefit of allowing them the choice of what type of conversation it is. Is it a listening conversation? Is it a fixing conversation? So many of us as men automatically jump into the fixing mode and we don't listen. And especially if you have daughters. And I learned this a little late, and I wish I had learned it when your kids were young and instituted it then. But I've tried to incorporate things that I have learned through the podcast and through other conversations and through other things that we've done into what I've done, even though my kids over the last 5 years have really been either preteen or teen. And now I have a kid in college. And when your kid goes to college or they leave the home in any way, again, it's phases of life and things change. And you have to be willing to change along with them. And that's not always easy, but you have to be willing to do that and give them the freedom to become who they're becoming and not always feel that you have to be that guiding person, even though you want to still guide and give the advice. But as they go off and hit that independence for themselves, a lot of times they're going to come back and they're going to be a different person. And you have to be able to accept that person that they're becoming, but also allow yourself to change as well. And it's a constant process. I mean, it's something that that my partner and I are constantly learning more about. You know, we're failing, but we're also learning. And I think that that's another thing that you have to do as a father. And I would just draw out too, that, one of the things that I'm really excited about as we move forward is the new partnership that we have with the City Dads group. City Dads joined us last fall, and City Dads really is bringing a whole new level of engagement for fathers across our country. And this organization has been around for a number of years, and they have provided that in-person opportunities for people to connect with other people and for dads to connect with other dads to make meaningful relationships. And while we have those opportunities online, the piece on there that I think is different is meaningful relationships, because a lot of times in online communities, you can still be sort of anonymous.
Right.
But when you're going to a meetup in person, you can't really be anonymous.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. You have to be real. And our kids make us be real. As you were saying just a moment ago, like this morning, I had to tell my daughter, I'm not always ready for her to be at the next developmental stage. And so some of the no's that I let slip from my mouth are not because I don't want her to be able to do those things. I'm just not ready. I'm surprised. And so as we wrap up our session today, yes, please check out the City Dads initiative that we have and the partnership we have with them. Check out our panels and resources. I will be coming to you almost every Friday. If not me, Chris or someone else from our board will be coming with conversations, as I said, with thought leaders and experts in the field of fatherhood, parenting, childcare, and connection with children, you name it. But at the core of all of this series is, how do you step away from your job, from your professional identity? And most importantly, when you step away, how do you take the skills that you're gaining and incorporating into your professional identity? How are you translating those into the home? If you are a professional project manager and you are great at taking ideas from a board meeting and turning it into a product on a shelf or doing event planning, you name it, those are steps and logistics that go into those projects. And those are the same types of steps that go into getting your kids out of bed in the morning, getting them fed, getting them dressed, daily grind of life, right? These are all transferable skills, whether it's coming from the home into the office or vice versa. And so our goal with this series, at least for the summer, is to help provide those resources and avenues for change if that's what you're looking for. So thank you for listening to Chris and I reminisce a little bit. We will be back next Friday with another guest and another after that. So please reach out if you have questions, if you want to get involved, and we will be happy to invite you into the community of Fathering Together. Thank you, Chris, for being here. Bye.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Join us at fatheringtogether.org.